This week, Shamim Naqvi from SafeLiShare is with us to discuss confidential computing. Then Grace Burkard from ioXt Alliance joins us to talk about transparency and certification for IoT device security. Finally, in the enterprise security news, some dope funding. It'll make more sense later. Some mysterious funding. Cyber Risk Alliance acquires the No Identity Conference, using AI to detect successful startup exits, Microsoft 365 Copilot, detection engineering stories and thoughts, decision trees, why buy from early stage startups, lots of crazy AI news, cyber buzzword bingo, all that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly.
Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy Near Miss Day. This is episode 310, recorded on Thursday, March 23rd, 2023. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the Czar of Zero Trust, the Captain of Content, Katie Teitler. How you doing, Katie?
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. Haven't had to worry about any near misses lately. This does refer to an asteroid that apparently came close to the Earth in 1989.
Wow. I certainly haven't had to deal with any of those. Thank goodness. That would be detrimental to our broadcast, I think.
Yeah, an impact crater, definitely.
Yeah.
And now we've got we've got a successful test, right? Like flying something into an asteroid on purpose. I forget exactly the purpose of that. I don't know if it was to see if we can redirect the asteroid but good to be able to defend the Earth from large rocks. Yeah. So that's a day, and today is National Near Miss Day. Yeah, they got a day for everything.
Near Miss Day wasn't last week Get Over It Day or something equally prophetic?
Yeah, it was or Always Right Day or something like that. Yeah, there's some weird ones out there, which is why we include it. You know,
it's why we do what we do.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah. All right, join us at an upcoming official cybersecurity summit in a city near you. This series of one-day invitation-only executive-level conferences are designed to educate senior cyber professionals on the latest threat landscape. We are pleased to offer our listeners $100 off admission when you use code SECWEEK23 to register. That's SECWEEK23. Visit securityweekly.com/cybersecurity summit to learn more and register today. All right, now for our first interview, we're talking about confidential computing with Shamim Naqvi, CEO of SafeLiShare, joining us today. Welcome, Shamim.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, nice to have you. I think it's interesting. You've got a interesting background, and I think be a great place to start for folks that weren't around back in the old telecom labs days, what it was like working at a place like Bell Labs.
Yeah, so I ended up at Bell Labs right out of grad school, and Bell Labs used to be the premier research organization probably in the world at that moment. I think it ended up with about 17 Nobel Awards in various technology subjects. And I was speaking to one of the patent attorneys at some point, and he pointed out to me that it was probably impossible to manufacture an IC circuit anywhere in the world without violating one or more Bell Labs patents. So it was at the forefront of research for a number of years. It was a national treasure, in fact. And it's the best job that I ever had.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds amazing. Like I read about the old like Xerox days as well, and it's I wonder, has all that research moved to like the national labs, like Lawrence Livermore, Oak Ridge National Labs, like all those places?
Yeah, well, those labs were always sort of around, but the freedom that Bell Labs gave was unprecedented. I can tell you a personal story that when I started at the labs, I was in the research section, and I spent the first week waiting for somebody to come and tell me what to work on, what my job was or something, and nobody did. And after a week or so, I got tired of waiting, so I went to my department head and I said, and his name was Rudd. I said, Rudd, what would you like me to work on? And he said, come in, close the door, which I did. And then he said, don't let anybody ever tell you what to work on. Do what your heart tells you to work on.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of unthinkable in those days, in current terms. Nobody in about 15 years of my life in the Bell system ever told me, here is a project, we want you to work on this project.
I can't think of a better background for a technology entrepreneur to have. You know, like if you're going to start what better education, and starting point could you possibly have? Maybe if there's also an MBA program, like you put those two things together, you're unstoppable.
Yeah. The other fascinating thing about Bell Labs used to be is that it was filled with these very famous people whose books and scientific articles and technical writings you would read about in grad school. And so I spent the first few months of my life at Bell Labs going down the hallways and just reading the names of the people. And there was this wonderful tradition that said that you could walk up to anybody's room and ask them for a little bit of time to talk to them. And they were really very generous with their time. So I would go in and I would say, what sort of things are you working on? What's a good problem to work on? And in fact, it turned out that the first few things that I worked on were problems that had been suggested by some of the people working in the labs there. So I had the great pleasure of being, and the wonderful opportunity to work with and learn from some of the luminaries in the area.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, is the opportunity to collaborate there, and to pester some of the other folks, ask them what they're working on. And it reminds me a lot about how informally some of the early hacking groups got together, because a lot of it was, like there was no really any motive aside from just exploring technology and figuring out what you could make it do, what you could do with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I remember that in those days, Bell Labs had a chess playing program called Bell, B-E-L-L-E. And it was being worked on by a researcher called Joe Condon. And I went to Joe Condon. I had gone to school at Northwestern, which also had a chess playing program in those days called Chess 4.6, I think, if I recall correctly. And I said to Joe, I'd like to work with you on this. And he said, what can you do? And I started talking about certain types of algorithms by which you could do very fast look forward, 10-ply search, 15-ply, 20-ply search, so you can look certain number of moves ahead. Mm-hmm. He said, completely useless. And I said, why? And he said, because the hardware will give you much better speeds. And so forget all these smart algorithms. Just depend on Moore's law and use the basic hardware. And that sort of insight was sort of remarkable insight in those days. And to that early on predict the idea of the Moore's law and getting performance gains through Moore's law.
So this background, this experience, the access to people, the conversations, I'm sure you could tell stories for hours, but also the openness of the culture. How did that shape you early in your career to where you are today? How does that help you be an entrepreneur, be a leader today? And what are the lessons you've learned that you try to pass on regardless of the climate?
One of the lessons is that you start to believe in the ideas that you have. You in the Bell Labs world, you had to sell your idea to other people. So I sit around and I come up with an idea, and I need some people to work with me and join me in that idea. There's no way I can force anybody to work with me. I'm just a single person. So I would have to literally go to other people, sell them on this idea, convince them of this idea, and then we work together on that idea. So to put together a team of 3 or 4 people, it was just like getting the resources and the people to figure out. So you had to really believe in your idea, sell the idea to your colleagues, put together a project team together. And it was like a sort of internal startup, if you want to think in those terms. So do you trust your idea? Do you believe in your idea? How strongly do you believe in your idea? And how much can you convince the world around you that this was a good idea?
In some ways, though, this is a little bit contrarian to how many, many companies work, because they want everybody sort of on the same page, rowing in the right direction, or what have you. It must have been scary as a younger person to come in, but also freeing. So how do you encourage that within the parameters of today's organizations, where it's a lot more goal-driven in terms of let's get the product to market as quickly as possible, let's get our message out to as many prospects as possible?
You don't. That particular Bell Labs model was the result of the way the research labs got funded. The Bell system was for all intents and purposes, was a monopoly, a self-regulated monopoly. And certain percentage of the profits of the Bell system were devoted for research purposes only. In some literal sense, the trucks rolled in at the start of the year with the funds, and you had a lot of liberty on how you did the research. So you find people working on projects that really had almost nothing to do with telecommunications.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have to. There was no forcing function to say that, is there a telecommunication application of your set of ideas? So people were working on satellite technology. People were working on negative feedback principles. People were doing physics research. People were doing, and some of it did get applied, but the primary purpose of all of that research was research, and not the commercialization of the research was a secondary thought. That sort of idea was pretty unique in those days. There weren't that many companies around that would let you do that would give you that sort of freedom. So in fact, there was a smaller group, I should say, doing fundamental research at T.J. Watson at IBM, the fundamental research group, and perhaps there was a smaller group at Xerox, but there weren't that many, and I don't think it's probably viable anymore in the current world.
Did the patent portfolio get monetized in any way, though? Were there fees that you would get from that patent, or that Bell Labs would get? Did that produce revenue?
So at some point, some patent lawyer told me that Bell Labs had upwards of 27,000 patents. And I asked him, if they were monetizing those patents, because he had told me, or he or somebody else had told me about that. Pretty much, there is nothing anybody could do in the world without violating a Bell Labs patent. So he said, no, we don't enforce, but we do. If we get sued, we do bring our patent portfolio to play, but we don't start enforcement proceedings against somebody else. So there was no infringement practiced by the Bell System Labs. This means that there was no monetization of the patents.
Okay. Yeah, and it makes sense with the patents you're talking about. Like, it would have a direct impact on the economy. If for every computer sold, a certain amount of that had to go to Bell Labs. Yeah.
I mean, Bell Labs did a lot of fundamental work for the DoD. It was very active in sonar, a lot of work in the submarine sector, cabling, underwater cabling. So there was a lot of stuff. In fact, if you looked at the center, the main building, it had these gun turrets at the front. So it had a Darth Vader sort of an outlook. Yeah. Still does, matter of fact. And those were put in place just in case that in the Second World War, somebody decided to bomb the place up.
Gotcha. That's an interesting place to come to work every day.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I wasn't around. I'm not that old, but I'm told of sort of wonderful stories about how people used to work in those days. And a lot of the early researchers would take the ferry across the river from different parts in the city, New York City, and drive up to, and then take a taxi or find some other way, local transportation, to come to work at Murray Hill location. So, just in terms of FYI, the fundamental basic discovery of the Big Bang radiation was also done by Bell Labs. Arno Penzias and Bob Wilson got the Nobel Prize in physics, I believe 1987, if I recall correctly, for the discovery of the Big Bang radiation, the 3.7 degree Kelvin radiation.
And I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was one of the seminal discoveries in physics last 30, 40 years. A lot of our astrophysics research is based on that, is based on that discovery.
I'm about 10 minutes away from Oak Ridge, so there's a lot of similar stories that I've heard growing up here in Knoxville, Tennessee, from stuff that was done out in the secret city, out in Oak Ridge.
Yes. So all of that was wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, thanks for that. That was a really interesting perspective. I've read a few books on it, but haven't talked to too many people that got a chance to work in some of those environments. So let's take this up forward. You've had several startups, and your current startup, SafeLiShare, is focused on the challenge of confidential computing. So let's start there. Let's set a foundation and just understand with what confidential computing is. I suspect some people have probably heard of it, but if you could just kind of walk us through the thesis of confidential computing and why you would want that.
So the basic idea is a notion of trust. How can you trust that a computation is secure? And what does secure mean, and what does trust mean? You have some data, you have an application, or you have an algorithm, let's say, for instance, and you want to run that algorithm on that piece of data. Why should you trust the results? You have a machine learning model, and the model predicts that a patient has a certain disease. Why should the patient trust? Maybe somebody has hacked the system. Maybe somebody has inserted some malicious code into the system. So very basic notions that we all sort of assume that something happens, some computation happens, what is the notion of security and trust and data protection, etc.? So these are very old questions, which people have been asking from the very early days of computing. So for example, you may recall that in the one of the central problems very early on in the history of computing was the idea of how do you do floating point arithmetic. And in fact, there were two classes of machines. There were scientific computers, so-called because they did floating point in hardware. And the general purpose computers, which didn't have floating point, they did floating point in software. And a big question was, should you trust the computations being done on computers that didn't have floating point hardware support? And so these kinds of considerations have happened for a long time. The recent trend in hardware manufacturing is to build in a hardware root of trust, which is a set of private keys that are used to attest the computing environment itself, the memory of the computer itself, to ascertain that no malicious actors gain access. In particular, what happens is that you can use this hardware root of trust and certain other capabilities in the that this computer is endowed with at the time of manufacturing to create completely isolated and protected memory spaces or regions of memory where computations can happen in complete isolation and protection, as I said. So no other process, no other entity that has access to that machine, including root passwords, etc., can ever break in to these protected environments, secure protected environments. In certain parts of the technology, these are called secure enclaves. But there are other terms as well. The general field is called trusted execution environments. So,
and we have, if I can just jump in here, we have some of these environments on modern computers, right? So
yeah. So in
TPM, Apple on their phones, they've got Apple has their own secure enclave for the fingerprint or the face scan that for certain operations, right?
Correct. Yes, your Apple iPhone has a secure enclave on a chip, and that enclave is used to store your biometric information and certain other highly personal information, so that as to protect it from any malicious actors that might get hold of your phone and might try to break into the phone and steal your personal biometric information or something. So these machines are being increasingly manufactured by all the major manufacturers. So Intel is on the second or third generation of these machines. The Xeon server line. Intel has a second line of machines as well coming out in the near future as well. AMD has a class of machines that use a technology that does trusted execution environments called SEV machines, secure encrypted virtualization. IBM has had a series of machines that use these hardware roots of trust. ARM is very busy manufacturing machines like that. So this is a growing trend. And in fact, I predict quite comfortably that almost all manufacturing of CPUs, etc., is going to entail some version of confidential computing. It'll be ubiquitous in the next year or two. So this is a growing trend. And what it'll afford the user community to do is to start to say, yes, this computation happened, but nobody saw my data. The service provider did not see the data. The platform that provides the service doesn't see the data. The cloud provider, if you're using a cloud provider, the cloud service provider did not see my data. In fact, did not even know which application ran and produced the results and computed the data. And the trust equation, the trust relationship is now between the data owner and the hardware itself. the hardware attests itself. That hardware root of trust has the capability to create a certificate from the manufacturers that says, that attests as to the integrity of the hardware itself. So now, in some sense, if you like the notion of zero trust, you have a notion that says that there are no trusted entities in this computation. There's the data owner, and there's the hardware that attests itself. There's no third party in the middle. There is no trusted intermediary that is needed. Nobody sees the data. It's completely private. It's completely confidential. The service provider doesn't see it. The platform provider doesn't see it. SafeLiShare, if you're using the SafeLiShare software, doesn't see the data. The user and the machine have a trust relationship.
Right. And I imagine, there are some implementation challenges there, right? Like in theory, something like this can be fairly impervious, but like I remember one case where they weren't encrypting between the TPM and the CPU. So somebody found out, like with a Dell laptop, they could just take the bottom off and clip some, I forget what the technical term for the little oscilloscope clips are called.
These are called side channel attacks.
Yeah. Yeah. And they were able to just record it straight, between the TPM and what the TPM was talking to. But right. I imagine there are challenges like that in software as well, and networks are involved.
So when I say that it's completely private and confidential, there are no known successful side channel attacks at the moment. But the world being the way it is, somebody will figure out some way of attacking and stealing information. And people are very creative about these things. But the nice thing is that the manufacturers are backing this particular piece of technology. So fixes and patches happen all the time. That's also true for all kinds of other technologies. The notion of encryption. There are well-known attacks against encryption that have been carried out, and there are patches being done, and there's a growing community of people in this field who now start to believe in the viability of encryption standards. So this is nothing new. One of the sort of interesting side channel attacks is that in confidential computing, the machine, as it does some paging, it writes or reads in pages of memory because of performance reasons. The pages that are written out are in fact designed to be encrypted, but under certain catastrophic situations, the machine can be made to think that some disaster is happening, and it turned out that there was a certain set of temperature or fire related convictions in which the machine thought that it should save the data and didn't have the time to, in fact, encrypt the data. So somebody figured out how to cause the machine to think that there was a fire alarm going on by messing around with the temperature sensors. And was able to.
If I can be permitted to make a joke, you could call it a kernel panic.
Yeah, exactly. But then people figured out how to fix that problem. So it takes a number of years of a new technology to harden it. But it's well worth it. As the world of privacy regulations continues to grow, we as a society are supposed to come up with newer ways of protecting people's privacy and protecting their digital online lives. We need technologies like this for the betterment of society as a whole. We certainly don't want to lose our medical information. We don't want to lose our health information to malicious people. We don't want to lose our identities to malicious hackers. And so these kinds of technologies are an absolute must. So it seems to be on the right track.
Yeah, and that's why, a lot of this stuff has to be done in the public eye, like adopting, we're in the midst of adopting post-quantum algorithms right now, and I saw just the other day somebody had an attack against one of these post-quantum algorithms, and it might have been a side channel type attack. We talked about it briefly in the news, but didn't dive too far into it. But yeah, exposure. There has to be a certain amount of exposure for people to have the opportunity to test this stuff and refine it and polish it and find all the issues, right?
I mean, exactly. NIST and other federal authorities are very interested in this topic. Quantum cryptography is a very interesting field of research at the moment. It's a number of years away, but that's my belief. But it certainly is an extremely worthwhile and extremely valuable research effort at the moment. And as we as a whole learn more about quantum cryptography and quantum encryption algorithms, there will be a growing body of knowledge on how to thwart certain style of attacks, etc. So this is all knowledge that the society needs to acquire as a whole, and it's for the betterment of everybody.
So what about key management? Is key management again, sorry for the pun, but a key issue here with trusted computing and
So one of the benefits of confidential computing is that since there is no trusted intermediary in the middle, who does key management? We know that data is encrypted, but if you're using where is the private keys that are part of this public key infrastructure? And the interesting thing in confidential computing is that you can make the hardware generate the public key pairs. When that happens, the private key is configured and designed to always remain inside the secure enclave. You never need to have the private key outside of the secure enclave. Only the public key comes out of the secure enclave. This means that I can use the public key to encrypt various information, which can only be decrypted inside the secure enclave using a key that is only known to the hardware. So the key management issue is considerably simplified. The keys are either known, the public keys are known to you, the data owner, the private key is only known to the machine, and you can produce an audit and compliance log to say which entity inside the secure enclave was allowed access based on the private key that was made available by the hardware to that particular entity. That's because a lot of encryption is one of the weaknesses of encryption technology is key management. When a particular type of encryption scheme breaks down, it typically breaks down. Most often, it breaks down because somebody mishandles the keys. In this particular case, the hardware handles its own key, so it doesn't matter. You, the user, are not burdened with key management responsibilities. In a very literal sense, the hardware hardware owns the keys, hardware uses the keys, but the hardware is incapable of releasing the keys to any external based entity.
Yeah, and so we've been talking, I think, in more kind of abstract terms here, but in terms of what your company is doing, is this, we were just talking about hardware, but I think you're talking about some of the use cases, using this in public clouds, right? So
yes.
So this is your confidential computing product here can be deployed into I don't want to say malicious environments, but environments where you don't necessarily have control at the hardware level, and that's kind of the point, right?
Yes, absolutely. You can all the major public clouds, Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft Azure, AWS, and others have these machines for general use, and you can provision these machines. They're very complicated to use at the moment, and one of the value propositions that SafeLiShare has is that we make it very easy for you to configure and use these machines and the deployment of these machines. But coming back to the point, if you use these machines, as I said, the trust equation now then shifts and becomes trust between you, the data owner, user, and the hardware that you have provisioned to run your computation. The cloud service provider is no longer in this equation. The cloud service provider never sees the keys that you use to control and keep private and keep confidential the data. And the entire integrity of the machine is managed by the machine itself, the hardware root of trust. In some sense, the cloud provider is just a facilitator of the computation.
Right.
So this,
and thinking about use cases here a little bit, I'm considering, I've worked with some companies where clients wanted our product, the product we were selling, to run in certain clouds, and there are certain situations where your requirements force you to maybe run it in Huawei Cloud or Alibaba Cloud, or for somebody outside the U.S., maybe Azure is the cloud that's less trusted, right? I'm speaking very much from a U.S. political centric point of view here, but it seems like the idea here is, I can meet that requirement and maybe not worry about what's going on behind the scenes in some of these clouds where, maybe I don't fully trust the operators.
Yeah, I mean, you can turn these public clouds into what we can refer to as private clouds. It's your cloud now, and the security is being handled by you, and the underlying machines that self-attest to their integrity. So it is a private version in which you are freed from key management. So there are use cases. There are numerous use cases. If you are handling private confidential data, PII data, personally identifiable information, or patient health information, or financial data, and if you are concerned about compliance with GDPR or the movement of data across legal jurisdictions, or if you're concerned about consumer data or banking data, etc., all of these applications of oversensitive and confidential and private data can make use of confidential computing. We are talking to healthcare companies. We're talking to financial companies. This morning, I spoke to two financial companies that are REITs, real estate investment trusts, just by way of example. And they say we have all kinds of information from our consumers. We do mortgage-backed securities, etc. So we have lots of personal financial information of people, and we need to protect this information. We need to process their applications, but we don't certainly want to expose that information to some malicious external third parties. So all of those applications are extremely pertinent and can benefit from this notion of confidential computing.
And clearly the primary benefit here is protecting the confidentiality and integrity of the data, but also it seems like there's some potential, well, maybe also a primary driver of this. You spoke a little bit to compliance and regulation, data residency, those kinds of things, privacy of data, but also maybe some side benefits here, like with your cybersecurity insurance.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, so as privacy regulations and security regulations, security threats mount, various regulations now require that the corporation goes out and obtains cyber insurance, and you are now making certain representations and to that insurance provider, and you have to have some proof that those representations are valid and that you are doing what you are representing, and which means that you need to have an audit log or a compliance report that is trusted. Now, if I am producing a compliance report or an audit log, and I testify to its truthfulness That doesn't mean anything at all. It just means that I'm saying that I'm asking you to trust me. The beauty of confidential computing is that the hardware assists the service provider in creating a report, which can be verified by third parties. You don't have to trust the service provider's report. You can give the audit report to any regulatory body, and they can use third-party tools to verify the report that it is an immutable, true, honest record of what happened inside the secure enclave, which actors were to whom the data was exposed, which applications ran, what is the fingerprint, if you pardon my use of this non-technical word. It's called a measurement. Applications have a certain program identity as well. Notion, it's a cryptographic notion. So which applications access the data? Which parts of the data were exposed to which application? And so all of that record is generated from inside the secure enclave and can be verified by independent third parties, where you no longer have to stand and say, trust me. You should say, trust the tools that are being provided to you by third parties to verify the authenticity of the log records. So it's a fundamental shift in terms of your risk posture as a company and your compliance with the representations that you make to afford insurance coverage for you and your customers' data.
No, I love that, Shamim, and I can think of so many great opportunities and use cases for this technology. And before we wrap up here, are you going to be at the RSA conference this year?
Yes, we are. We were a little late in doing, so we won't have a booth, but we certainly will be walking the floors and trying to get as much people to chat with us as we can. We might host a little session for some friends, a coffee hour or a cocktail hour or something like that. We're still, our marketing department is working on that aspect of the situation. But yes, we certainly plan to be at RSA.
All right, excellent. Well, for folks listening, if you want to learn more about SafeLiShare, we do have some links in the show notes that you can check out. And Shamim, thank you so much for joining us today and telling old stories and new ones that you're creating right now.
It's a sign of being old that you have stories. Thank you for asking wonderful questions, and very nice to meet you, Adrian.
Likewise. All right, folks, stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to talk IoT security with Grace Burkard from ioXt Alliance. Attackers are only getting more proficient, so how can you proactively adapt your cybersecurity strategy? Core Security by Fortra helps you uncover and prioritize the risks that pose the biggest threat to your organization. Core Impact is a penetration testing tool that safely finds and exploits vulnerabilities using the same techniques as attackers. You can conduct advanced pen tests with ease using certified exploits and automation. Take your engagements further by pairing with our red teaming tools from Cobalt Strike and Outflank. Learn more at www.securityweekly.com/core security. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Security Weekly listeners save $100 on their RSA Conference 2023 Full Conference Pass. RSA Conference will take place April 24th through 27th in San Francisco and on demand. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC 2023 and use the code 53UCyber. That is 53, the letter U, Cyber. We hope to see you there. If you don't have flights and hotels, you should go ahead and do that. They're just going to get more and more expensive. All right. For this interview, Grace Burkard joins us today to talk about IoT security and transparency. Grace is the Director of Operations at ioXt Security. Sorry, I didn't quite finish my notes there. ioXt Alliance. There we go. Welcome to the show, Grace.
Hi, Adrian. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one that I'm really, really excited about. I hadn't heard of ioXt Alliance before this, but I saw you somewhere. I think maybe it was LinkedIn. I saw something, but got really excited about this. You know, hit you up on LinkedIn, asked you to come do the show because this is something we've been talking about for a while. If you go back in the history of the Security Weekly show, there's actually an inordinate amount of IoT hacking that happened on this show. Lots of hacking old Wi-Fi routers and stuff like that. In fact, if you ever watch Paul's Security Weekly, they have kind of the old Linksys models and D-Links that they used to hack hanging on the wall behind them. But it's a fascinating topic, and back then it was fun, but now that a computer is in everything, it's a little more scary and a little bit less fun these days, I feel like.
Yeah, in a connected world, a lot of people want to feel safe. And so when you've got everything from, your home, your car, things at work that are all connected, you really want to make sure that you've got the right just standards in place to make sure that you and your family are secure.
Yeah, and what's really surprised me here is, and I think we talked about this on the prep call for this interview earlier, but I've seen examples of what it might look like on a box, a product that you might go to Best Buy and purchase. The idea of this kind of security, transparency, privacy information card. That would be on there, kind of like a nutrition facts label. And I think it was Carnegie Mellon that put together some examples there. And then when I saw what you guys were doing, I had no idea that anybody was this far down the path of making that a reality, as you guys are. You already have a lot of certified and self-certified products on your site.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We've been doing this for several years now. And, just to back it up a little bit, the ioXt Alliance as a whole is a group of manufacturers, industry alliances, labs, OEMs, and government regulators who are really dedicated to harmonizing best security practices and establishing testable standards. So our goal is to bring security, upgradability, and transparency to the market and directly into the hands of consumers. So what we have and what we do is we have our Smart Cert label, which is a QR code that manufacturers and service providers can, when they certify and they get certification, they can put this mark on their product boxes or they can put it on their websites, on product pages. And so what that allows customers to do is to be able to scan in real time, and it will take them to their product page on our website where it shows the security levels and the certain standards that they meet. So you'll see everything from, maxed out to the fullest level, or, you may see a couple different levels here and there. But if it's certified, they're meeting at least the baseline requirements, which we have our 8 pledge principles. Just to name a couple of them, we're looking at no universal passwords, vulnerability disclosure program, proven cryptography, automated updates, and verified software. So, just pretty basics that we believe most, if not all, should be following. And so, if you want something to point to specifically, you start looking for that QR code that has the ioXt label, because you'll be able to go straight to the product and say, how secure is this product really?
Yeah, and you can also see, it looks like you can see if they self-certified or if it was a third party that certified them. And I love that there's an opportunity to report a vulnerability here, that takes all the guesswork out of that, right? And also dispute the certification.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually one of the biggest things that sets ioXt apart from our competitors, is that we do have not only third-party certification, which everybody is very familiar with. You have your testing labs, and this creates peace of mind for organizations and partners and customers alike. But not only that, it can also boost purchasing confidence, offer thorough vulnerability detection, and broaden testing capabilities just in general. However, it's not very scalable all the time. So we do offer self-certification, which not many, if any, really do accept us. So what this offers is it's less time consuming, it's more affordable, and it's easier to update the products. You don't have to wait for a lab to do all the testing over again. So with the self-certification, that means that they're going to come in, they will answer the standards and the questionnaire that we have when it comes to the security profiles, and they have to provide documentation such as PDFs or URLs to their policies. And then we've got our technical team who will go in and review everything to make sure if they say they have A, B, C, they actually do have A, B, and C. And so, usually we're working directly with the manufacturers on these. If they have questions, if there's, if it's not super clear what the standard is asking for, or they may have different tools that they're using. So we're very open to working with these manufacturers to make sure that they have everything that they need to pass certification. And then either way, whether it's lab or self-certification, we do have the vulnerability disclosure where you can come in and dispute if you find something, or if you can't find something. Say you're looking for that vulnerability disclosure program on the manufacturer's website and you can't find it, you can come in and say, hey, I don't think they actually have this. And then we will go in and validate any disputes that come in. And that's, going back to what a manufacturer has provided, or when they went through the test lab, what the test lab was able to provide. And if it's valid, though, say they, are missing something or something has changed with the next version, then we will go back to manufacturer, make them aware. They have a certain amount of time to go ahead and make the changes in order to keep their certification.
Right. And that's, I think Katie's got a question. I'm going to hand it off to Katie here real quick. But just to reiterate some of those things, like I love the fact that you're letting them self-certify at this point, because I feel like if we wait for this to be like federally mandated or something like that, like there's so much work that can get done before all that kind of stuff happens, before we can convince all the manufacturers to have a third party assess their product. So like anything is good. Like sometimes I just want to know, is this something that is has a default password? Is this something I'm going to have to remember to log into once or twice a month to click a button so that the firmware updates, or will it do that firmware update for me? And this answers all those questions for me, which I love.
Yeah, exactly. We really want to make it as easy as possible for customers to understand, what are they buying and how secure is it? And, do they have more questions? There's always the ability to reach out, right? But a lot of the industry is not as transparent as we would like it to be. So we're trying to, have that conversation with manufacturers and lead the charge on making it more transparent. So the customers have the ability to make purchasing decisions based on real-time data.
I have a couple of questions here. Obviously we're talking about the consumer, and the consumer's a little bit different. I think people are becoming more aware, and so your organization and others are doing a fantastic job making sure that that message gets out. But in terms of the manufacturers, how does this change their traditional IT audit process, or does it? Because this is a different kind of certification. There are different rules, there are different devices, obviously, different technologies, but how does this change what they do internally, if at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, right now we are voluntary, right? So if a manufacturer wants to get certified to differentiate themselves or to really show their customers that they are taking security seriously, they come to us. We're obviously reaching out to others, but it's all up to them. And so sometimes that's a little scary. When you're talking about, okay, these manufacturers, are they or are they not incorporating security even as a default? Some of the things that I hear from manufacturers are, oh, yeah, well, we'll incorporate security when our customers ask for it. And so, as you mentioned, some customers are starting to understand and starting to ask for security, but others are just thinking, well, I thought security was already built into the device. What do you mean I have to ask for it? So then it starts posing the question, well, who is and who isn't doing this, and adding security just from the get-go. And you'll see, obviously, the big players who have the budget and the resources to do so, they probably are. But then you've got some smaller and medium-sized players who are the wait and see, or they just don't have the resources to do that. You're seeing a lot of IoT or smart products nowadays that weren't initially smart. So one of the examples I love to provide is there was a casino in North America that their network was hacked because of their fish tank thermostat. That was smart.
I remember that story. This is a great story. Yeah, please go on. I love this. This is so much fun.
Yes, exactly. And so when you have instances like this, where you're just not even thinking, oh, this will impact me, or this is a product that I might be hacked through. It's starting to get to that point where hackers are smarter and they're getting more creative in their ways to hack people or businesses. And so I think as a consumer, whether it's personal or for business, you really should be thinking of all the different products that can be connected and are connected. And, I used to work for Georgia Pacific. And so they have IoT products, your hand soap, your towel, just things that weren't before, right? And so it's exciting because there's a lot of this new opportunity out there, but then also scary because as these things are becoming smart, are these developers thinking about security at this point? Or are they saying, oh, well, we're too small, or nobody really thinks about us? So I think this is starting to change the way that people are going about their businesses. I'm a big supporter of manufacturers just thinking about this for their customers from the get-go, but I think it's very pertinent that customers should be asking these questions of the manufacturers. They should be, asking for reports or transparency or certifications or something that shows, hey, we are doing the work to add security to our products and you can trust them. And that's a big word, trust, right? There's a lot of products out there that say, oh, trust us, trust me, we're doing it right. And how do you really know, right? And so we're really trying to help with that issue.
No, that's fantastic because, like you said, with the casino example and the smart fish tank, sometimes you don't even think when you see, something like that, you don't even think that it would be in any way connected. So in some cases, the consumer might not even be thinking, oh, this is a smart device, right? Because, sometimes it just isn't apparent that way. Or we, at some point, may get to the point where almost everything, whether it needs to or not, it may be smart, right? Like there are some questionable, quote unquote, smart products out there right now, but at some point, almost everything might be digitally connected in that way. And there you get to that point where people are more cognizant of it. But I think we're still at a point where there are some things that are surprising to a lot of consumers, and manufacturers, they have to be the ones leading the way.
Oh, absolutely. And I really think, to your point, where if how do you know if it's going to be smart or not? I mean, if you're connecting it to the internet, whether it's Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or an Ethernet cable, there's a good chance that that's smart, right? I mean, that's a dead giveaway right there. So I would just say, if you're connecting anything to the internet and it asks you to pair, just think, oh, okay, this could be hacked.
Right. Yeah, like in the casino example, for instance, these are consumers in a public, well, not a public place, but yeah, you know what I mean, more public place. It's a private casino, but it's open to the public. Or you go into a grocery store, what the consumer might not be aware of what's smart and what's not at this point, because that's not up to them. That's up to the retailer or to the hospitality group or to wherever you might be going out in public.
Yes, I absolutely agree. So I think manufacturers have a certain responsibility to their customers, whether they're directly selling something or if they're providing an environment where they have consumers who can be targeted based on just walking around their stores. They should be accountable and make sure that they are providing top of line, or at very least, basic security for these customers.
Yeah, we're chatting. We've got a back channel here, and I was just saying, it's such an oxymoron to call these smart devices, right? Like maybe we need to call them something different, like smart devices with built-in internet hazards. I don't know.
Something, yes. When you just have Internet of Things can mean so many different things.
Yeah. And calling them smart just because they're connected to the internet, it's just some of them are anything but smart.
Yes, yeah. Although there are so many more out there. I don't know if you guys went to CES this year. There's so many more out there that I was like, wow, I didn't.
Share some highlights.
There was a couple. All right, let me think about a couple of them off the top of my head. But I remember walking around thinking, I didn't even know I had some of these inconveniences. And I was watching some of these devices and I was like, man, now I kind of want one of these. And I'm going to come off as, a crazy cat lady here, but there were several cat products that I was like, oh, wow, this can tell me all about my cat's health and how often I need to go change the litter box. And, so I was actually kind of excited about some of these. But then at the same time, I was like, man, do I need to be concerned about these new devices and their own security to my own networks? So things to think about.
And each one of those is a separate app on your phone, just about, right?
Oh my gosh, yes. I joke that I'm starting to run out of plugs in my home because everything is connected and everything needs to be charged. And my phone has less and less space these days.
Well, I love that we're going after consumer first, because we talk about this a lot on this show about how an enterprise can spend $1 million on something, and if it works, great. If it doesn't work, like they're seemingly not all that concerned. Like it's fairly common to find an enterprise with just huge purchases that just don't work or don't come anywhere near the hype that sold them. But a consumer, you spend $1 on an app and it doesn't do what it says, like they want that dollar back. There's absolutely no patience. And earlier you're talking about using this as like as kind of like it's part of your marketing messaging. Is, hey, we've gone through some kind of security certification here, and consumers saying, I didn't know I had to ask for it to be secure, because I imagine for a lot of consumers, you violate their privacy once, they're not doing business with your brand anymore if they've got choices.
Oh, yeah. We have actually seen this. We had one company that came to us and they said, hey, we had a breach, and they're trying to get every certification in the market now because they've lost customers, they've lost the trust, they've lost revenue. So they really had to start digging themselves out of this hole. And you never think it's going to happen to you, whether it's, again, personal or business wise. And so some manufacturers are sitting and waiting and, oh, that'll never happen to us. But it only takes one time. And that one time can have huge repercussions for your business and your bottom line. So why even take the chance? I don't think that anybody wants that to happen. I don't think if you go out and you make the best effort, obviously you can't protect against everything, but if you're not doing anything or even the basics, then you're just setting yourself up and setting yourself open for these attacks. And so if it's going to, take another $1 million to implement the security, well, hey, that might save you millions and maybe even billions later on in revenue if you do get hacked, and all the consequences that come with that.
Yeah. And I think that's going to help us go through the process of figuring out how to do this well. Also, I think that's the other benefit here is the consumer cycles overturn a lot more quickly, and with consumers being so fickle, especially in a market where tons of people are laid off, they're not spending as much, they're maybe going to think a little bit more about what they spend on, and want to make sure it's not a piece of garbage that's just going to expose them on the public internet, give random people control of their door locks in their cars. And we've seen some crazy stuff with consumer products.
I have a question for both of you, actually. Okay. Percentage-wise, what would you say you have in your homes as far as smart devices or internet-connected devices, as compared to non-smart devices?
I am actually the worst person to ask about this because I really don't have that many smart devices in my home. And I don't know if that's because I know so many that aren't as secure as you'd want them to be, or I just haven't gotten there yet. But I know I have a lot of people in the tech industry who have a lot. I remember we have a technical guy, and he would try out every single product. We have product managers that we work very closely with, and they have probably 50 devices in their home. I know one guy had 3 Alexas who just in the vicinity of his computer. So every time we would talk and we'd say, oh, something about Alexa, and then he's got 3 of them going off all over the room. He'll be like, Alexa, stop. So I'm not the best one to ask. I mean, Adrian probably very different. But yeah, I would say tech people that I know, tons and tons of devices.
So even if I didn't work in cybersecurity, I would have tons of stuff. I'm just a gadget nut. I mean, since I was a kid, I love all kinds of different gadgets. And I don't just have internet connected gadgets. I've got gadgets for all sorts of things, like something as mundane as like a cubby to, put your flash drives in or something like that. I've got a really fancy one with magnets and stuff that does neat stuff. There's no electronics in it, but I'm just fascinated with different kinds of gadgets and puzzles and things like that. So yeah, my network is just full of internet connected crap. And I probably have over 50 things, but the other side of it, to me, I feel like as a security professional, especially if you want to help the community, friends, family, stuff like that, I think it's important to be an early adopter and to understand how to do that safely, because you can't really advise people, if I know security folks are I've got, there's nothing internet connected in my house except for a couple laptops or something. I have smart nothing. Like, well, I'm not going to ask you for advice on how to protect against threats, against those, right? So I think, within reason, I think it's important to, like we talk a lot about AI on this show, just because it's going to have a huge impact on security, the latest advancements in AI technologies. And yeah, so the lighting that's lighting me right now, those are devices that run Linux or Android or something like that and have their own IP addresses. These two key lights that I can just hit my Stream Deck here, and I can turn them on and off. I can control the color of the light that I get from them, the intensity of the light that I get from them, and they're super fancy key lights.
And have you had them checked through the ioXt Alliance? Have you gone and made sure that they're up to their certs?
Yeah, so these are Elgato, and I don't think Elgato has, at least not that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of them having any certifications or anything like that. But most of my podcasting stuff is Elgato branded.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Elgato, if you're listening, hit us up. We can let you know if you're not.
Indeed. I think they got acquired by Corsair not too long ago. And Corsair also makes a lot of like gaming, streaming type devices, computer components, stuff like that. But yeah, no, definitely want to see this stuff go through, because like the Stream Deck, the software for some of this stuff lets you integrate with all kinds of other devices. Like you can certainly, if you put your bad guy hat on, you can do some stuff with these things, some not so nice stuff.
Yeah, speaking of bad guys, so one of the big things that ioXt is working on is the U.S. national label. So with Executive Order 14028 back in 2021, essentially the Biden administration was tasking the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, with going about increasing the cybersecurity for the U.S. as a whole. And two parts to this. One, they want to obviously make sure that the United States manufacturers are abiding by some type of baseline standard, but then they also want to be able to participate in international discussions, right? Europe is doing a lot around cybersecurity. Singapore is doing a lot around cybersecurity. A lot of these countries are having these conversations, and when the U.S. we have multiple companies and organizations like ioXt Alliance who are doing this. You've got labs and so on. So what they want to do is harmonize a lot of these under one national label that the U.S. would back. And so that would also help consumers to look for that specifically in stores. You go in and two parts, again, that the national label would be something very simple and binary, such as the Energy Star label. You see it and you're like, okay, I know that I trust this label. The US government backs it. And so I would need to go out and look for it to know that this device is secure. And then also it would have a QR code as well, so that it could take anybody who wanted to know more information around the security standards that the product is meeting and find that online. So what ioXt is doing in regards to this national label is there are several work groups that have come together to go through and decide, what are the standards. So NIST actually did collaborate with the private and public, I should say, industry to get the feedback on what is important to include in their recommendations. And so they did release that back in February of 2022. And then actually in September or October of 2022, they came out with NIST IR 8425. And so those are the requirements that they have published. And so the work groups that came out of that we're now involved in, it's really walking through and saying, okay, what does this pertain to? How would a scheme owners, what we're called, such as ioXt, be able to accommodate these requirements? And so we are very involved in that. We're actually taking charge and giving a lot of our experience and knowledge just in, certification industry as it is. And then, what does the design look like? You mentioned Carnegie Mellon. There was actually a White House meeting back in October. And so Carnegie Mellon was there to present their type of label, the very long nutrition label, which is great. And then ioXt did as well with our own QR code and Smart Cert label. Then I believe there were a couple others, such as CTA and CSA. So a lot of good work is being done on these. I believe there is a announcement April 1st coming that should give more information. I believe the goal obviously is to get this done by the end of the year. And so, I mean, it's great to say that. Government is always interesting when they put deadlines on things. But that's our goal as well, because we really want to see this succeed and think that a national rollout will have a very big impact on consumers and retailers alike. We think that this national label, it's got a lot of big players who are involved, that want to see it succeed, that want the national label themselves. We've seen LG, Samsung, Sony, Bosch, Google. There's tons of these manufacturers. So if the big guys are doing it, there usually be some type of trickle down effect. But yeah, if the retailers get into this, that will be game changing, because if the national label comes out and it goes well, the retailers may say, hey, we only want to sell products that have the national label, or they may give special preference to products that have the national label certification. So that could be pretty big and impact the industry in a big way. I don't think that there's going to be any mandates at this point to get it at this point. There's conversations, there's always something political going on in today's world. So who knows, that could change down the line. But at this point, even if it is voluntary, with how many big players and how much people are asking for security transparency, I think that this national label has a very big opportunity to make a big splash in North America and the United States specifically.
That's great. I mean, you're right. Exactly. When I just had to buy a new light fixture for my bathroom, and I went online to buy it, and I was only looking for Energy Star certified lights, right? Because it's one of my options. I can filter on those, and I want to be able to do that. And so, yeah, that's a great analogy, and I think that would, like you said, do so much for the consumer. And it would bode well for the companies that want to participate in it. But you brought up an interesting point, because you were naming some manufacturers. And especially when it comes to things like IoT devices, we have to think about supply chain. We have to think about how some of these devices are built, where they're built, with geopolitical, socio-political issues that unfortunately have some negative connotations. Yeah, how can companies get around that? Because if you're building a device, let's say it's, quote, homegrown in the US, it's likely that some components may come from overseas, may be built in countries that are considered adversarial. How do we go about certifying those? How do we go about, sort of the whole issue of certifying that not just the device itself, as a whole is good, but the individual components? And what about foreign ownership, control, or influence? How does that all play out? That's so complicated, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually used a couple of those words, because that's exactly what we use in the work groups is, device and components. So the NIST definition of an IoT product includes not just the device, but items outside of the device as well. So you're talking, it's the device, it's the app, it's the cloud, it could be the hub, it could be websites. So it's really very encompassing, which makes it a little tricky, because not all security is made the same. per product or even per ecosystem. So when you're trying to account for standards that are across the board, sometimes they're very vague, and so it makes it a little. It's open for interpretation a little bit, and that's what the work groups are trying to help with and make sure that it's not too interpretive, where someone could just come in and say, "Oh yeah, I have it because this says XYZ," and it's so vague. It could be anything. But it's also not super restrictive, saying, hey, you have to have X, Y, and Z, and then therefore it might leave out A, B, and C, which comes down the line that, it hasn't even been built yet. So to your point, when it comes from anywhere, I think that's what's best about these security standards is that, as a baseline requirement, and I'll say that some of the requirements that NIST has come out are higher than what ioXt does currently, but we're set up pretty well to accommodate some of these, most of these requirements. But I will say that the devices themselves, if you can meet these requirements, they will be safe no matter where they come from. Now, however, where they come from, I don't think that they'll be able to meet some of the requirements. So therefore, I think that they will be able to weed themselves out pretty well. So yeah, it's tricky and it's very technical in language when you start getting into it a bit. But I think if for my mom or any just everyday person, if you were to see the US national label, there's that trust that goes with it, that this device would be secure and that you wouldn't have to worry, no matter where the device originated from or parts of it, as long as it's meeting those standards, that's what's going to be the most important.
I just wanted to mention we've got a really good talk with Bob Martin from MITRE, and he's working on something he's calling System of Trust that kind of goes deep into this, the provenance of, different components, where they come from. It's funny because there's this whole story that he tells on sushi, and most people don't think of sushi as having a big supply chain issue, but there's a lot of fraud in there. Like there are techniques to make really cheap cuts of fish from one kind of fish look like, the high dollar tuna steaks and stuff like that. Like basically you trap it and you pump a bunch of carbon dioxide in it, and it turns the white flesh pink and makes it look like tuna. So that's a really interesting topic that's episode 260 or 768 of Paul Security Weekly, one of our sister shows that goes deep into that with him.
Yeah, that's funny. Sushi. You definitely don't think about that, but that's true. I mean, it's happening everywhere, right? Even things that you don't think it's happening. It's just natural for companies and people alike to want to get the cheapest option sometimes. And that's one of the things to talk about too, is there's a little bit of this consumer awareness to go around. We talked about a little bit earlier where consumers, they don't want to pay a lot of money for something that's not good, right? And I think that there's always this price tag in mind mentality, but for good products, those are usually going to cost more because, they are building in the security. Now, I think there's security sensitive devices that people will pay more for, such as your Ring, your doorbells, your locks, your smart locks, your smart cars, your baby monitors, those types of things, right? That are going to be pretty vital home security systems. And then there's other ones like light bulbs, right? Or microwaves or fish thermal temperature things. So it kind of, there's a mindset that some people have to get around of like, oh, well, I don't want to pay that much. Things in today's world, I get it because inflation is high and so many things are expensive. You don't want to have to pay these higher prices for certain things. But when it comes to IoT devices and security, and not to say that everything expensive is secure, I think there's some checks and balances that a consumer wants to do to make sure they're getting the right security with their products. But I think there should be an expectation that the good ones aren't going to be super cheap. right? It's almost probably a dead giveaway for the ones that are super cheap that they probably don't have security.
And I like that idea, like Amazon will sell you the super cheap stuff, but maybe if you go to Best Buy, like they've got a certain level of standards where they're like, yeah, like we don't want to see a bunch of returns coming back in here because they're going to have to deal with those returns directly. It's not going to go out in the mail. But,
yeah, exactly. Definitely one of the things that retailers are thinking of. And I think, again, like you guys said before, where you can actually have the ability to search in the retailer's search functions. I want to be able to find the security products that you are labeling as secure. So I think that's a big one to look out for coming in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, and as we wrap up here, I mean, just to summarize, right now we're talking about mostly consumer devices. Just looking on on the website, you've got a lot of Roku devices. Roku acquired somebody that did like smart home devices. I forget the name of that company, but yeah, all kinds of like home automation, lighting. Bunch of stuff like a lot of the stuff that people are going to be worried about, that especially once you throw a camera or a microphone in something, that stuff, especially I'd be checking for these certifications or the locks. Like I know August had a lot of issues with something. I remember seeing them in the news a whole bunch. A lot of these smart locks were just were really kind of scary. Not to mention cars. Cars is like a whole different. It's a whole different thing. The whole thing is just like a bunch of smart devices pasted together, right?
Yes, exactly. And I honestly do think that, consumer devices are the right ones to start with. However, I think with the national label and how successful it will be, I think this could easily be adapted to enterprise and commercial. So although we're talking about consumer devices now, we may be talking about building network controllers or lighting network controllers or access control tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. So where should so the website is ioxtalliance.org. And I urge people to go there, browse around, check out the devices that have been certified, and especially look at all the details they go into. Like I had a great time just checking that out, just looking at all the little nooks and crannies that you guys certify stuff on. Because some of it didn't even occur to me, and once I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, I do care about that.
Yes, definitely.
Where else can people find you? Are you going to be at RSA or any other shows that you're going to where people can talk to you or get more information about this stuff?
Yes, absolutely. We are going to RSA. So there's actually a great session that we'll be attending that goes more into this national label. It's called the U.S. National Cyber Label Program for Consumer Connected Devices. It will be on Tuesday. So we'll be there. We won't have a booth. We'll be walking around, but people can definitely feel free to reach out to me specifically on LinkedIn, or through our website. We're most likely going to several other conferences such as Black Hat and DEF CON. We always go to the CES, beginning of the year. So if there are others that you think ioXt should be at, there's a couple here and there that we're considering that are a little smaller, but or even Europe. I know there's MSC that just happened. I know that there's the IoT Tech Expo coming up in Santa Clara. So we're open if people want to talk to us, have us come speak at anything. We are very flexible and willing to talk more on this topic.
Awesome. Grace, thank you so much for joining us today. I was so excited to have you on for today's show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I love this.
All right, stay tuned. We'll be back in a few moments with the weekly enterprise news.
Created in 2005 and hosted by security industry veterans, Paul's Security Weekly is your source for in-depth coverage of the latest vulnerabilities, exploits, and security research. Our weekly security news discussion dives deep into the security issues we face today and potential solutions in a fun and lively atmosphere. Each week, we bring on guests from the security community to learn about their journey and discuss topics relevant to their work and research. You can also subscribe to our show by visiting securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Paul's Security Weekly in your favorite podcast catcher. We've recorded a ton of content over the years, so we created Spotify playlists featuring some of our favorite episodes, including interviews with Marcus Random, John McAfee, and Chris Roberts, to name a few. You can find them at securityweekly.com/starter packs.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. As a member of the Security Weekly community, we are pleased to offer you 20% off your InfoSec World 2023 tickets. Join a community of over 2,000 security professionals and innovators at InfoSec World on September 25th through the 27th at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort. Experience world-class learning and networking through enlightening keynotes, informative panel discussions, interactive breakout sessions, hands-on workshops, and more. I've been to several of these. They can be a lot of fun, and the location's a lot of fun too. A lot of folks bring their families with them, and they do some Disney stuff, and then they do some InfoSec stuff. But you can register today at securityweekly.com/InfoSec World 2023 using code ISW23-SecWeek20. ISW23-SecWeek20. All right, now for the Enterprise Security Weekly News. You can check out securityweekly.com/ESW310 if you want to click the links yourselves and check out what we're talking about today. All right. Time for some dope funding and some mystery funding. I don't know if you guys looked at dope security, but man, they are leaning into dope.
They are. They even use an AF reference in there too.
Did they?
Yeah,
AF?
Yeah, there's an AF. They said they're fast AF.
Oh, how's that going to age, Tyler?
They'll have to redo their website in about 18 months.
What about a full rebranding?
That's pretty standard, though, for startups. Actually, that's a pretty long time for startups.
That's true.
I don't know if you want to link your company name to the zeitgeist. tends to, these things go through trends. Oh, and if you use the product, which you can sign up for free, and you can try the product, and you log into the console, it's fly.dope.security is the URL for the console. I know because I've done that, and I'm playing around with the product.
Now, the product is a secure web gateway in a distributed model. It sits on your mobile device on your endpoints, correct, Adrian?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So
isn't that a personal firewall?
It's an agent, yeah, but it only cares about websites, so not a firewall. I mean,
it reminds me of the old McAfee personal firewalls, or I forget the brands, but yeah, they would do. I mean, they would do web security as well.
Yeah, so you can set up a policy. There's filtering. It's very similar to like a WebSense on your PC. Yeah, so they're not doing anything innovative in terms of the technology, I don't think. I mean, except they're saying like the efficiency of how they're using and deploying the technology is like orders of magnitude more efficient, which is why they can sell it at like a consumer app prices. It's like less than $10 a month for this. And you can just throw a credit card at them and have like enterprise level security for $8 a month or something like that.
So is this a B2C
just fall under
play?
the SASE category?
It's a good question. I don't know if it's. I think maybe both. So it's kind of like like Notion is both, right? Like individuals use Notion for free. Individuals pay for Notion Pro, and enterprises, pay for Notion for their entire marketing, customer success teams. Whoever uses it. So, I think we're seeing more and more of that in the enterprise space. consumerization of enterprise is the term I've heard bandied about. But yeah, it works. I played with it a little bit, and the dashboard is very fancy. It's very nice. It's you could say it's fly. I'm not sure I can get away with saying that out loud, but I just did. Sorry for anyone that threw up in their mouths after I said that.
Well, that's okay. If you read their FAQ, the top question on their FAQ says, "What if $60 a year is more than I want to pay?" Their answer is, "Our priority is to get you flying direct without breaking the bank. Reach out to us and we'll work out custom pricing for you." They're literally like, just pay whatever you want. We don't mind.
Yeah,
I
looking
want
for
my
growth.
$2.
So it does have a minimum of 250 devices. So that answers your question, Tyler.
There it is. Okay.
I think I'm on a trial, so I didn't realize that. That was less clear to me when I signed up for the service. I did not see the minimum of 250 devices. I'm not going to be able to hit that minimum.
Wait a minute. From the last segment, you said you have a ton of devices in your home. Maybe you will.
I do, but I can't afford to pay $8 a month for all of them. But yeah, no, it's not bad pricing for what they're offering.
Yeah, I mean, when you read through their website, they're definitely leaning in heavily on design, which is something I've been pushing for years now, saying that most markets in cyber can be completely upended just by having better UI, UX design. Yeah. And they're kind of leaning into that. They don't really even say that they do anything unique from a technical perspective on their website, other than being a distributed version instead of a centralized data center version. But it's more about, hey, we design it better, it's easier, it's quicker, it's faster, and it's easy to use.
Implementation, including like the whole sign-up process, 3 minutes to have it running on one of my devices, and they've already got it set up to where you can automate installing it on all your other devices using whatever MDM you're using. And it all syncs in through your single sign-on provider, your IDP.
Yeah, this one's going to be interesting to follow, not because I really care about the market, but I care about the fact that they're reinventing the market with a true, like a B2C version of an enterprise deal focused on UI, UX improvements in design and efficiency of the product. And maybe this could be the first test of a lot of different companies kind of innovating in this way.
Yeah, super interesting marketing study, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So there were a few of these. I said mystery fundings because a few of these, number 4, number 5, number 5, number 6, and number 7, don't say how much they raised. They just say it's a venture round. And I wanted to ask you, Tyler, if you think this is, if they're trying to hide down rounds by not specifying the amount.
Tough to tell. I think number 7 is listed as a seed. If I recall correctly, you have notes there that say that one, which was Sakuvi, took a seed round from Dell Cap, Westwave Cap to modernize digital privacy and security, undisclosed seed. That's interesting. That wouldn't be a down round if it's a seed. It's probably a first round, and it's likely a small round, a rather small round. And so we're not going to really announce how much it is. Maybe. I don't know. Tough to know on that one. Grip definitely could be a down round. Tough to know. I know the Syndicate Group. I know who they are. I'm in their Slack, actually. And so that one to me actually just feels more like a small investment that was done by a side group and not a primary round as opposed to a down round. I don't know much about the Cap One and City. Is probably filtered because they're not standard VCs and they don't want to give away how much they invest. So I don't think any of these are down rounds, actually. Okay. Maybe Grip, but I doubt it.
Yeah. So you just different funding than we're. Yeah. So I mean, to me, it's just strange to see, several companies that I'm already aware of having funding announcements that don't have any numbers behind them, because usually we see the numbers. Yep. So immediately your
spidey senses went off. Totally get it. The way you should think of this is what is the benefit to doing an announcement of the round size, and the benefit or risk to either party on either side of it, right? And that's kind of how I backed into those, right? An undisclosed seed led by Dell. Dell usually says how much they invest. That was probably a smaller round, tough to know. The Cap One and Citi, they don't usually announce how much they invest. They're more banks as opposed to traditional VCs. So that's probably why that one's kept quiet. And the syndicate group is a super small. You have to know that particular investment group to know that they're likely just doing a small, sub 1 million is a guess, but sub $1 million round. So it's not really worth talking about the numbers. So that's how I kind of back into that. It's conjecture across the board. So as far as the audience is concerned, I have no idea, but it's probably an educated guess.
But do you think, given market conditions, now what you said makes perfect sense for these companies, but we don't have a lot of funding this week, actually. And given market conditions and what happened with SVB and everything that's going on, do you think we're going to start to see more of this? Because it is, in fact, a way to put some padding between your company and the market if there isn't so much transparency. And frankly, a private company doesn't necessarily have to say how much they got or not. That's nobody's business, actually, until they go public. So is that a way to insulate themselves from any kind of speculation about how well or not well they may do, depending on market conditions in the future?
Yeah, that's why they're not putting numbers on some of these things, right? They're either having flat rounds, which are just used to extend runway and bridge, or the up round isn't big enough to even warrant it, or the down round, or it is a legit down round. By keeping it opaque, you don't get to know, right? And so you can't jump to too many conclusions without the data to back your hypotheses as a outside viewer to the deal structure, right? So that's 100% why you keep it hidden. Do I foresee it to continue? 100%. I think we're going to see a massive amount of M&A in the second half of this year as the market stays depressed. All of these companies are just going to struggle to continue to have enough runway to be successful, and are going to look for ways to consolidate. Not only that, just taking away any of the macroeconomic impacts of what's happening right now, we were over point solution invested in cybersecurity anyways. Thousands and thousands of point solutions. It had to roll up, and now it just makes sense from a finance perspective as well that it's going to roll up. So I foresee a lot of M&A second half of this year going into next year.
Yeah, with the IPO market being what it is, that's off the table for a lot of companies. And when you go into an M&A deal, it seems to me like in a lot of cases it could be more beneficial from a branding perspective, from a perception perspective, if the kimono isn't completely open. And it doesn't make your company better or worse necessarily. Market conditions change all the time. This is not unique. But it might put your company in a better position in some cases if you're just telling the people who need to know. Not everybody needs to know.
Yeah, let me put it to you this way. It's going to be those companies that are or were truly close to IPO, not sitting on some negligible amount of revenue talking about becoming an IPO company. But really we're truly on the cusp of IPO. They will do fine because they will position themselves better as far as the health of the company, the revenue, the run rate, the burn rate, all that kind of stuff. And they'll get themselves into a good spot, and they will IPO when the door or window reopens. But other than those guys, it'll be a barbell-shaped recovery for these companies, right? The ones that are at the top and can get healthy and do well will thrive and continue to do well. Those that are being born right now and are tiny and are healthy and are building in a healthy way, taking in the correct amount of VC, they will do well as well. It's the ones in the middle that took in a bunch of money, don't have great unit economics, are sitting somehow on 10 million of ARR, having not really hit product market fit. Those are the ones that are all going to get scooped up in M&A.
Yeah.
All right. The first one here, Ambit. I'm not sure how to say that. Not a good first impression. But it's just, so I dug into this one a little bit, and it feels a lot like Cato Networks, like the old 40 cloud. Like, basically, maybe you've got an application, the database lives in one cloud, the front end lives in another cloud or something like that. I don't know why you would do that. Like that you're using the cloud wrong. But yeah, maybe you've got components spread out for whatever reason. Maybe your client status in another cloud, let's say. And this basically creates like secure connections between them, which sounds kind of like ZTNA. Like there's a ZTNA for employees, for people to log in and access applications that aren't published to the public internet. But then there's also been the stuff that's kind of machine to machine. Like, how do I securely connect machine to machine behind the scenes between AWS accounts, between different public clouds, or, private data center or colo and public clouds. And that sounds like what they're doing, but the words they use are completely unfamiliar. They're calling it identity platform, but it seems like it's all machine to machine interactions. So messaging is confusing to me, but it seems like a play on what some of these SASE vendors are doing.
Yeah, I can't really comment on the actual product itself because I don't understand what the press release says, and it's still a bit confusing. But a couple things that are funny and a couple things that indicate a potential that are good signals of potential success is they are backed by some really good folks, Ballistic Ventures and 1011. Mark Hatfield from 1011, and I don't remember who the partner was at Ballistic, but those guys know their stuff from an investing vantage point, so that's usually a good sign. Kevin and David, the founders, Sapp and Goldschlag, are both multi-time founders, have been around the block a bunch. That's also a really good signal. What I want to know is, how do they get, this is blowing my mind, they got Gartner Cool Vendor in November of 2022, last year, 6 months ago, and they're just coming out of stealth now. How do you get Gartner Cool Vendor notification if you're a stealth company?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's like the next level of cool. Like you're stealthy cool. Like you're
hipster cool.
You don't even know how cool we are because you're not what we can't tell you.
You can't even see us. Like, we're invisible cool. So that kind of blew my mind.
Ninja cool.
Considering the cool vendor used to require, I think it was a $5 million ARR level before you could be considered cool. But I guess that's not a requirement anymore.
I always personally had a problem with the label cool vendor. Do you want to be cool or do you want to be effective?
Why can't you be both, KT?
That's the goal, right? But it's a little bit harder. Can't guarantee
because you're in security, and I'm in security, so I say this with the utmost love.
I guess it works, right? Because I'm definitely not effective. So.
So you're just cool, Tyler. You're just cool.
I like it, Katie. That's what I'm sticking to right there.
Okay. All right. I would rather see effective security vendors or vendors who solve a real problem than cool. There are a lot of things in this world that are cool that don't do anything.
Yeah,
I'm going to start putting out a cool company of the month. Once a month, I'm going to put out a report on a cool company of the month. If there's any vendors out there that would like to be included on the cool company of the month, ping me. I will release that information on a monthly basis.
Okay, now you just made yourself get extra work because people are going to do it.
Good. Ping me. I actually had pre-committed to this before I got on the call, so I knew it was coming anyways. It just gave me a good easy way to talk about it.
You played me for that. You did. Man, you right up.
Set us up, you bastard.
Tyler. Bad.
What else is on the list?
All right. Well, speaking of throwing people a bone, the Cyber Risk Alliance did an acquisition. They picked up the other. I don't know the identity conferences real well, but apparently Identiverse and No Identity were like the two big ones. So now we've got them both under one roof. So probably hear us talking about those, maybe announcing discounts for going to that conference, and maybe we'll check out who's speaking there and bring on some folks to talk to. So Identiverse, I loved learning about that one. We got some great interviews off of that one. Didn't even know it existed before CRA did the acquisition. So a lot of cool stuff came out of that one. So looking forward to learning more about that conference.
Yeah, that's cool.
The next one. Sorry, any comments on that?
Nope. Was just saying that's cool, Adrian. I think the good combo platter of those two conferences together for CRA will make a good fit.
Hey, we were predicting consolidation, right? In this market. There it is. I'm really curious about your thoughts on number 9, Tyler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I did deep dive this. I'm bummed that I don't have access to a PitchBook account because for those of you that are not viewing the list and listening to it, number 9 on our list is tools. It's a tool article about PitchBook has got a new tool that uses artificial intelligence to predict which startups will successfully exit. I don't have the article up in front of me, but I want to say they had like a 75-ish% regression analysis on historical data, which is good, right? Like we typically want to see in the upper 80s to low 90s to say that something is a good fit model against historical data. But, if that were the case, it would certainly make investing a lot easier if we had closer to an 85% predictability from a tool like this. But, I think a 75% accuracy rate of using historical data from PitchBook to say what companies are going to successfully exit is actually pretty interesting. I think it's kind of a cool idea. I really wanted to get in there and play with it and run it through my portfolio and see which ones are going to exit well. I don't have an account, which is a bummer. But the other thing, though, that I wasn't sure about is how do you define successful exit? What makes an exit successful? And If I recall the research, it was an exit. They set some kind of arbitrary financial threshold of exit, but it's tough to know. Like, is it a multiple of invested capital? Is it revenue run rate at exit? Like, how do you determine success?
Is it break even for the investors? Is that successful?
Right.
Break even?
Right. I can tell you right now, as an investor, break even is not a successful investment, but it might be to their analysis, meaning, hey, as long as we made money, it's profitable. That's a positive exit. But again, the definition of success here, I think, is the trick. But it's kind of a cool idea, and I hope it works. I really do.
Yeah, so I went down a bit of a rabbit hole here too, because they mentioned that a team of researchers used public Crunchbase data to build a similar tool, and the success rate of that was 80 to 89%. And I couldn't find the tool, so I kept same thing as you, Tyler. I'm like, yeah, but sounds great. I want to see it in action. I want to see some results.
Yeah, and you can't get in there to PitchBook to actually do it, right? You can't get in there to PitchBook to run it, which is, I wanted to run it over my portfolio and see what I could expect.
What is that, like $20,000 to get into? I've never even looked at the pricing for PitchBook. I don't know what it costs.
More than I'm going to pay. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, not a personal use purchase. Maybe a VC.
No, it's a corporate
purchase.
It's a corporate thing. Yeah.
Let's see here. So I know a lot of people really excited about number 11, Microsoft 365 Copilot. I haven't dug in a whole bunch in this one. I saw something where basically, like, you describe what you need and it builds an app for you using your data or something like that. Like, it's okay. So yeah, so in the article they've got descriptions, product by product. What Copilot does for you. So Copilot in Word writes, edits, summarizes, and creates right alongside people. So it sounds like kind of an extension to what we already have in our email now, which has been there a couple of years, where it tries to finish your sentence for you or write the rest of the email for you.
Oh, way more than that. It's more of a Chat GPT type.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. So have you, Adrian, to give you a counterpoint, because I know you're a heavy Notion user, have you used or signed up for the Notion AI?
Yeah, I use it. I use it regularly.
It's basically that, right? Where you can generate entire pieces of content, massage content. To give it a good example, in my weekly newsletter that I put out now, I've actually, each time I finish reading one, I've got a workflow now that auto dumps it into Notion, does a one paragraph summary of the article with, I even tell it, and please include a snarky joke at the end to try to spur my creativity for funniness. And then I'll even occasionally say, and I want a five tweet storm summarizing this article with funny jokes, and it'll create tweet storms for me.
Wow. And does it know that there's like limits for each tweet? Does it break it into like the sections? Oh, wow. Okay.
Absolutely. And then I can just cut and paste each one into Twitter. Alternatively, now, I think Notion AI, I know ChatGPT just today released integrations through Zapier, which basically means you could even say, and I want you to publish this to my Twitter account automatically. Like this stuff, the connectivity, the connective tissue behind the AI systems now is just going crazy. Like the workflows are going to be popping up left and right. And that's what these really are, is content creation in each of your, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Outlook. It's all the content creation. And then eventually you're going to be able to get that content creation automations to occur, things like that.
I've got a workflow for you guys. This happened. So I was asked to jump on as a co-host on Paul Security Weekly last night. And I didn't have a whole lot of time to prep for the interview. And, I've been trying to leave ChatGPT open, just to encourage me to use it more, to explore more with it. And so they were interviewing a guy named Wiseman. What was his name? Nico Wiseman.
Nico Wiseman. Yep.
Yeah. And so Nico Wiseman is Argentinian. So I'm looking up talks that he's given and stuff like that. And, I do this, every now and then for an interview. If somebody has a bunch of talks, I'll listen to maybe one entire talk. I'll take a look at a few others. And I've got this plugin for YouTube called ChatGPT for YouTube that summarizes, because a lot of YouTube videos have the entire transcript listed just in text. When you load that video page, there's a text blurb with all the words that it's transcribed. Maybe it's not 100% accurate, but enough that this plugin can feed that into GPT, and in about 20 seconds, I can just read the summary and I know what the talk's about. I know what the high points of the talk are about. So what really blew my mind is that many of his talks were entirely in Spanish. The transcription was entirely in Spanish. It still gave me the summary in English.
Oh, wild!
In about 5 seconds. Yeah, it didn't slow it down at all. The fact that it was in a different language, didn't care.
Wow, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. I'm absolutely blown away right now with the leaps and bounds happening on a weekly basis.
That blew my mind. Because I checked too. I checked the transcription. I was like, was the transcription translated? It wasn't. It was all in Spanish.
Yeah, it's able to use multiple languages on the fly. That's pretty amazing. Yeah. So the net of the introduction from Microsoft is, it's trying to maintain its competitiveness within the Microsoft suite so it doesn't get overrun by content creation occurring outside of Microsoft products.
Can't beat them, join them.
That's right.
Yeah. So we might as well jump down to 19, 20, 21, 22. I've got other AI trends grouped there. So if we're going to talk about any of these, the first one is, of course, companies are trying to keep employees it's not going to work. JP Morgan Chase and Co. and Verizon have reportedly blocked employee access to the online tool. Oh. Yeah, good luck. That's gonna work for about 30 minutes.
I mean,
why
that's
bother?
Just dumb. That's just dumb.
Oh, I'll just whip out my phone. ChatGPT works perfectly fine from a cell phone.
The whole thing's stupid at the end of the day, because it's like, oh, here's one of the most innovative new ways of making business, 5 to 10 times faster and more efficient. And we're going to just say, nah, you can't do it. You can't use that. Like, think of the trade-off just in business improvements for those companies. That's ridiculous.
So 20 is interesting. We're predicting AI will replace work jerks. People skills will become more important. Man, is that a title? That title grabbed me. It worked.
Quite a title. What's a work jerk?
If you have to ask, people? You're the work jerk. right?
Is that what it says in the article? Shoot, I just outed myself.
Nifty tech will unfortunately not save us from boring meetings. That was the one thing I was really hoping it would do, but...
So a work jerk is that coworker who's brilliant but a horrible person, so you better watch out. Yeah,
you
well,
got to
of
put up
course
with them
that makes
because
sense.
they're super important. Yeah.
Well, what I mean is, of course, that makes sense that is exactly what AI will come out as right away, because it doesn't have empathy or an emotion or the ability to put themselves in other people's shoes and, have feelings and be hurt and upset. It's just like, no, here's your facts, move on. Here's your facts, move on. I think over time, that too will come, though. I think over time, the empathetic part will get in there too. Because if you think about it, I was in ChatGPT or Notion. I don't remember which one I was using, Notion AI, and I told it to write me a bunch of jokes in the style of Chris Rock. I told it to write me a bunch of jokes in the style of Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, and a couple other comedians. I don't remember who I used, and they got the tone of voice correct. So it shouldn't be that hard to say, rewrite this entire section of content you created with an empathetic tone, with a kinder tone, right? So I think I don't think that we're going to see a proliferation of work jerk versions of AI. I just don't think that happens. I think people will soften it up fast enough.
No. They're not saying that. They're saying,
oh, good.
No, I think
it shows you how much I read the article.
Take it away, Katie.
I think this is the opposite. It's saying that the people who are the work jerks will be replaced by AI that knows how to be somewhat more diplomatic.
Oh,
well,
hell yes, count me in then.
Yeah, it's not saying AI is going to be more diplomatic. It's just going to say like the things that the tolerance for jerks is going to be much less because you can replace them with an AI so easily. Like there's just going to be less tolerant for putting up with people who do their job well but are difficult to communicate with, difficult to work with. So there's going to be more emphasis.
That's what I was saying, a little less eloquently.
I think that.
So maybe AI will replace me because I'm long-winded and verbose.
But I think the AI having empathy or not like isn't really taken into account in this article. But it is a good point to explore.
Well, I think that's a massive
it is and it isn't, because if you're saying, if somebody has if they're a complete jerk and their communication skills suck, they can be replaced by AI, which has better communication. Is it leaps and bounds? Is it anthropomorphizing AI a little? Yeah, sure. But if you're saying it's better to work with, then there is an element of, better communication, sympathy, whatever, you want to throw in there. AI is not quite sentient yet, but what we consider a human quality is at this point, somewhat subjective. So I think it all points to the same thing. If you're that person who can't speak well, we're going to use AI that's better equipped to speak to other people.
Yeah, this whole article,
because it's not a people. You know what I mean?
This whole article doesn't even work for me. Yes, I agree. Sure, a coworker who's brilliant will get replaced, or a jerk will get replaced. But if you're a brilliant jerk, you're probably brilliant enough to use the AI to do half your work anyways, and therefore have the empathy coming from the AI to fix the problem anyhow. I just think this is an inflammatory article.
I have a workflow
with a title like that, absolutely.
Here. If you're a work jerk and you know that people think you can't communicate and you're difficult, et cetera, you could use AI on the fly so that when you're asked a question, you could respond to it in a better way that is perhaps perceived a little more, enthusiastically than how if in your head you're thinking, oh my God, I freaking hate you, just go do your stupid job, and that's how you want to react. You're not supposed to do that. You could just use AI to spit out what you're supposed to say and say that instead.
Yeah. Yes. And the author here, Diamond Naga CU, I wonder if she just said, hey, AI, generate me an inflammatory article that can get some clicks.
Well, it worked. And now we're talking about it for 10 minutes. So there you go.
Win for Diamond. Well done, Diamond.
I love the cynicism. That because the moment you say it, you're like, I can see AI spitting that out. Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. Like if I told the AI, write an inflammatory article about what you can replace in the workplace, and it comes back with, I can replace mean people. Let me write an article on that.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. We're all going to turn on each other. The AI is going to have us turning on each other. I'm sure everybody by now has heard the story about the AI that couldn't solve a CAPTCHA, so it hired a human to do it, and then it lied to the human and told it was a disabled human.
I have not heard this story. This sounds amazing.
It is. It's one of those, like, there have been a lot of really interesting AI stories in the last couple of months, but yeah, this gave me some goosebumps.
How did it hire the human?
I don't know. So this is not like a consumer product that did this. This is like researchers who are being way more bold with how they're using this stuff. So apparently like letting it use the internet and stuff like that.
Yeah. So this is a massive concern of mine, right? Is literally, I think it was last week or the week before, OpenAI made their APIs publicly available within the last few weeks. I don't remember the exact date, making the jumps in AI usage astronomical. And now you're seeing products rapidly iterate and coming out based on the AI capabilities of OpenAI on the backside. Now we got literally just announced, I think this morning or yesterday, was ChatGPT and Zapier integration, which is, hey, we can use the internet for anything, right? Zapier is we connect to the world via APIs. How long is it before execution capability from the AI engine really becomes the norm, and we just start saying, hey, ChatGPT, order me dinner, give my wife some flowers, make this other thing happen. Oh, and by the way,
it already knows to do that. Why would you even have to ask it to do that? It already knows to. It's reading your calendar, your emails.
Next step further.
Yeah.
Right? Then you take it the whole next step further, and this is the start of sentience. I keep freaking out every week on the show. This is coming fast.
So the irony here, like, you could almost call this a side channel attack, because the irony is, like, most people know the term CAPTCHA. But CAPTCHA is an acronym that means completely automated public Turing test to tell computers and humans apart. And basically what the computer has done is said, okay, fine, I can't solve your fancy CAPTCHA, but you know what I can do? I can get a human to do it for me. How do you like that? How about them app?
You're going to be my subservient B word. That's what's going to happen.
It doesn't need to pass the Turing test if it can hire someone on Fiverr.
Is it passing the Turing test by proxy if it outsources it?
That's why I called it a side channel attack, right?
Yeah. I love it. It
did. It bypassed the Turing test by using a human to do its bidding.
Now, did it come up with that idea on its own, or did the researchers kind of seed it?
No, they were intentionally testing, allowing it to use the TaskRabbit service, but they did not anticipate it using TaskRabbit to get around a CAPTCHA.
That's crazy. It's smart enough to...
I think.
I'm blown away.
Yeah. So, no, the researchers, so they suspected it would do it. And so they specifically set up this test, giving it the resources it needed to see if it would figure it out, and it did. So they wanted to see how it would react if it couldn't solve a CAPTCHA, but wanted to get into the website. And they gave it the resources it needed to do it. So it's not like it just randomly Googled, how do I get humans to do things for me, and came up with TaskRabbit. They specifically integrated it with TaskRabbit and made it aware that it could hire humans to do things.
You are stoking the fears of millions of people around the world, Adrian.
I'm already stoked, man.
The AI was led to the water, but they did not have to make it drink. It did choose to do it on its own. So not quite as scary as, it was just like, we were just randomly testing this thing, and it just like started hiring humans to do things. They did kind of set up the resources for it to do that.
Yes, but the media clip will take that part out.
Yeah. Now, if you read into this article and it was like, but how's it going to hire the human? Oh, it stole some credit cards, or it mined some cryptocurrency and paid them in crypto. like then I'd be really worried if it took that steps to achieve this.
We don't have this article in this week's list, but on February 17th, an article came out that the inventor of the web, Tim Berners-Lee, so that's a big dog of all big dogs, says that we will all have a personal ChatGPT style assistant in the future, where literally you ask it to get things done, just like that.
Yeah.
And it goes and makes them happen. Not just, hitting up flowers or whatever, but an actual full-blown personal assistant that we tell to do whatever we want it to do on a daily basis across the board. He thinks that becomes a reality potentially this year.
Yeah, I don't think
it's wash my floor.
I don't think it's a stretch at all to say that happens this year. Absolutely.
I think it orders a maid to wash your floor. If you want to give it unlimited budget, it takes care of it. It makes it work. It starts bridging the gap from the cyber world to the meat space.
Because I can tell you that the little robot vacuum things, no good. They don't work.
You give it a budget. You give it a budget. It's negotiating with humans on Craigslist. Sure. It's using honey to find coupons before ordering stuff that you need.
Absolutely.
It's your personal finance manager.
Your lunch and dinner. It orders your groceries on a budget. Why can't all that be automated as soon as that AI-backed system is connected to meat space via APIs?
Yeah,
that's it.
But finding the cheapest price for something is already something that's fairly easy for computers with access to these data sets to do.
Well, I've always wondered why Alexa and Google Home couldn't do it. I've always been angry why I can't just go, hey, Google, order my wife flowers for her birthday. It still doesn't work. And I think they've just missed the boat. They didn't do what OpenAI solved, because had they done that, they would have backed those systems with OpenAI, and we would all just be using Google or Alexa instead.
Well, it's the same thing that frustrated me with video games, right? One of my frustrations is all my friends are playing this game. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can go grab that game. Oh, but they're playing it on Xbox, and maybe I have PC, or maybe I have PlayStation or something like that. Same game exists on those platforms, but you can't play with each other. Mm-hmm. What the hell is that? The game looks the same, it plays the same. Why is there no crossplay? And the answer to that question gets into politics against why would a competitor allow? And it does exist. Crossplay across games on different platforms does exist, but I don't know what kind of hurdles these different game developers are having to go through to make that happen, because clearly it's not as easy as it should be, because a lot of them, it doesn't exist for a lot of them. But the same thing you're talking about, why can't I watch Amazon Prime on an Apple TV 10 years ago? You can now, but back then they refused to put the Prime app on Apple TV because Amazon was a competitor, and consumers lose.
Yeah, I've never been more excited. Crypto, whatever, all these dumb fads that have come over, and I'm sure the crypto heads will get angry at that, but all these dumb fads that have come over the last 10 years that get investors super excited and, we got to dump all our money into X. This is the first one that has actual work output, things getting done on a daily basis, improving life. This is the first one since the invention of the internet, and then potentially the invention of mobile devices.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Tyler. That's what makes this so much more exciting than blockchain. Is I was experiencing the value of it firsthand on that show last night. I was asking him very detailed questions about talks he gave in Spanish 7 years ago, without having to watch the talk and without having to understand Spanish. And well, obviously I'm on the call, so I can't even listen to it talk while I'm live on the podcast and we're doing the interview. But yeah, blockchain hasn't done a whole lot for many people. Like, some people made some money in it. A lot of people lost some money in it. You still can't spend it anywhere, not significantly more than you could 5 years ago, I feel like. So the utility just isn't there. Whereas with this, anybody can jump into it right now. Yeah.
Yep. Day one, the value is there. And then now that we're seeing the API connectivity, the inbound, outbound API connectivity is the breakthrough point. The ability for this system to make calls to other systems to automate physical tasks, game changer. Absolute game changer.
And to your comment, Katie, I'm trying to type a reply to your comment in the back channel. But do you remember how much the Honey acquisition was? Which all it did was scrape websites for coupons. It was like $4 billion or something like that.
I do. Yeah, I just wrote for anybody listening or watching that I had this idea 15, 20 years ago to build some sort of website scraper to find the lowest price for items that I wanted to buy. And everybody said, oh God, that would never happen. Nobody will let you do that. You're never going to get permission to do that. It's a terrible idea. That's awful. It's not going to happen. And Honey. And I'm working, and I'll be working for another 20 or 30 years. Yeah. So sad. Yeah.
And everybody told that to the folks who did Honey also. They heard all the way through it. Oh, this is a dumb idea. Dumb idea. 4 billion exit for a Chrome extension. I know.
It's really sad. GoFundMe. No, I can't.
All right, let's move on to.
We rat holed on that one.
Yes, we did. No, it was a very good rat hole. I enjoyed that. It's important perspective, I think. So the other thing about AI, I think we might have talked about this last week. I think Tyler, you might have been the one to point this out, but it's just stuck with me, is the idea that the moment there's an opportunity to take all your company's data, shove it into a large language model, and basically have a virtual employee who never forgets anything and can answer any question about any conversation, any deliverable or file that's been created, help locate things for you. Like that's going to be nobody can refuse that. So the moment that becomes available in Microsoft 365, some random employee is going to check that box, and it's going to start churning on that data and learning on that data.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. I mean, think about it. If you had literally I've often wondered recently how important data lakes are, right? Everybody's been talking about data lake for the last 4 or 5 years, whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, okay, you can store tons and tons and tons and tons of data in a structured or unstructured way that allows you to consume it. Wait a minute, allows you to consume it rapidly into some kind of big learning system. Boom, when you layer AI onto that vision, the value becomes abundantly clear. It's only a matter of time, specifically in the security space. It's only a matter of time before people are like, hey, we're going to dump all this in, and we're just going to tell our AI system, go look at everything that is the corpus of everything in our universe and make it more secure. And it goes, okay, and off it goes. That's where we're headed. It's just a matter of time.
And suddenly we no longer have the overhead of having to build folder structures, have to organize things, have to tag just things.
Dump it.
Yeah. Yeah, we won't need to organize for our own brains, for the way our own brains work, bookmarking things. We'll just need to ask the question. Hey, what was that? What was that thing? That thing last week Bob was talking about? And it's just going to tell us. Know exactly what you're talking about. So yeah, we need to prepare for that. Let's hit a few more of these items real quickly and then get to the squirrel stories. I feel like we've been, I don't know how long we've been running. I forgot to turn on my timer, but it's been no regrets. It's been good conversation. Katie, let's talk about, so speaking of trends in 2023, we've been talking about the impact of AI. I think automation goes along pretty closely with that. So I wanted to hear.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it made one of our squirrel stories, the buzzword bingo sheet. I don't think it did.
Buzzword.
But
so
yeah,
Kelly,
we've been talking about automation for.
Did you do a buzzword bingo thing?
Yeah, there's buzzword bingo. It's the last one.
Yeah. So I was talking about 14, which was your article.
I know. Yes, no, I know. I said I don't think automation even made the buzzword bingo list.
It didn't, and it probably should have. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So not the squirrel story, but I was just sorry. I'm not making sense. It's fine. We're talking about automation. It is a trend. It is not a buzzword bingo inclusion. But yeah, automation, it's been around for a while in some areas. Some places it gets better. Some places it hasn't been accepted as much. And, given the current market trends, given the state of the hiring, we've been talking about the need for more hiring, more talent, more available bodies, more skilled people, bringing diversity and inclusion in to fill seats that aren't filled, just the amount of technology that needs to be run and used in organizations. This piece just addresses automation and why it can be a force multiplier for your business. I believe that. I did have one person on LinkedIn comment, don't be so quick to automate everything and you've got to have oversight. Well, I'm not saying that you shouldn't. You should move your people to more of an oversight, more of a governance role, and free up a lot of their time from those menial, mundane tasks. So this in no way says the machines are taking over, you are going to lose your job. And I think some people will probably read it that way, but there's a lot that we need to automate, just like you guys were talking about with the AI and having people use AI to get rid of, I don't need to call the dry cleaner to pick up my dry cleaning if I have that service. My AI assistant can do it. Same thing, but at an enterprise level for enterprise stuff, and machines are really, really good at churning through mountains of data. Humans are not. There are things we can use, and so that's what I really focus on in this piece.
Yeah, definitely.
And the squirrels are still up there.
And it's and it's we're not at squirrel stories yet, but it's
and they disappear.
Yeah. I mean, it's a challenge, right? Oversight on a lot of this stuff. Like at some point, it's just not going to be possible. Like it's, and that's kind of why I bring up the shove all your company's data into an LLM point. Is there's stuff is going to go in there that shouldn't be going in there, and it's going to spit out when it shouldn't be coming out. So that's just inevitable. And you know what? It's still going to be worth it. It's still going to be, the productivity gains are going to be so big. It's still going to be worth dealing with the unintended consequences that are going to come out of that.
And I also think, in security, we're a little more cautious about some of this stuff. I know from working at my company, we have automations in our product, and a lot of companies won't use them because they're worried. They're worried about the consequences. But at some point, the business, just like with everything else, is going to say, you are going to turn this on. We're wasting too much time. We're using too many resources. It's going to come. And the people who don't figure out how to use automation effectively and let it be part of their daily workflows are probably also going to be phased out of their jobs.
Tomorrow's Blockbuster and BlackBerry. Though BlackBerry survived, they just had to pivot.
Yeah.
Also interesting here, Kelly Shortridge did a talk where we talked about her Deciduous app a while ago, which is a decision tree modeling tool, which is really neat. It's got its own modeling language, and basically she's showing off like here's ways that you can use it to map out failures and things like that. Kind of the same way I've been using Sunil Yu's cyber defense matrix. So I'm actually kind of excited and curious to try it out for breach postmortems, like the same way I use Sunil Yu's for that. I think it would be interesting to see what some of that stuff looks like when you map it out in a different visual format. So that's pretty cool to check out. You can go to deciduous.app and play with it yourself. It's free to play with. What else do we need to talk about before we get down to... I think that's about it. I have some detection engineering stuff in here that we won't have time to get to, but if you're interested in that, it's there. Business email compromise is way bigger than ransomware. I feel like I hear about ransomware a whole lot more, but if you look at the actual numbers, business email compromise is anywhere from 10x bigger, 20x bigger to, 5 to 6 times bigger, depending on whose numbers that you take. If you take the FBI's numbers, it's like 200 times bigger. The EC is so much bigger. Yet another way, I don't know, AI could be used for defense or attack. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, this, we can skip that. Yeah, so squirrel stories. If you want to watch a fun video, this is one of the biggest YouTubers out there, Mark Rober. He doesn't release a whole lot of videos, but when he does, he puts a ton of work into them. You probably know him from creating the Squirrel Olympics in his backyard. A lot of people have seen those videos where he makes these squirrels go through different mazes and puzzles and stuff like that to get walnuts. And this one's about drone technology that's being used in Africa. That's really, really impressive. And some drone technology that's being used here as well. But basically the idea of making, these drones are nearly silent. You can be standing 10 feet away from one and not hear it. And instead of landing, which is, can be dangerous, they're either dropping things off with parachutes, or they actually have like a system where they drop the payload down to the ground, let the payload out, and then bring this, the mechanism that holds the payload back up. So basically, it's got a, like a boom, almost like a crane boom that it lets down. Really cool stuff, though.
Yeah, he's also Mark Rober's super cool guy. He does everything over the top. He's like Mr. Beast level content creator. Definitely go watch this. They call it the zip line, the thing you're talking about. They zip line the little holder down and it drops off your dinner or whatever you ordered. He's the guy that did the glitter bombs. I don't know if you remember that guy.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Porch Pirates. The Porch
Pirates. If you stole a package off somebody's front steps, and it had a bunch of phones and glitter bombs, and it was pretty wild. But definitely look at this video; it's fun to watch.
Hey, since you guys haven't had a chance to watch the video, I just screenshotted the ChatGPT summary and posted that in our Slack.
And for what it's worth, I've been watching the video in the background while we've been talking for the last 10 minutes, so it is very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, the one he goes to, what country does he go to? I don't think they included it in the summary here, but it's Rwanda, I think, is where they're using these to deliver medical supplies. And they have a slingshot. So this is more of a plane style drone. Very light drone, and delivers like blood when hospitals need like a certain type of blood. They put in the order. They slingshot this thing up. It delivers it in like 20 minutes, and it comes back. And they actually have imagine like on an aircraft carrier, the wire catch mechanism they have to arrest the movement of the plane. They do that, but with it still in the air. And because it's so light and it's already going fairly slow, it basically has a hook where it knows exactly when to deploy the catch line, and then it just grabs the tail, and then somebody walks out and grabs it and, swaps out the battery pack, gets it ready for the next flight.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool to watch, like the whole system. Like it's clear that they just went through like 1,000 iterations of improvements and improvements and improvements until this thing really works at scale. And it's cool that he got to go out and see that process, like how they developed this thing to be useful. And because it's one of those things where you'll hear like a billionaire talk about, oh, we're going to do this in Africa. and you're like, yeah, sure, the economics don't work. Like, like I'm sure there's a million problems with it, and it's cool to see one that actually works.
Very cool.
All right, I think that's all we've got time for today. Check out the buzzword bingo. We've got that just in time for RSA.
Those are always fun.
Take that with you. See how you do on. See if you win bingo out at RSA. I imagine you probably win within the first 20 minutes of walking around the expo floor. But
easily.
Yeah. But yeah, it's all we've got time for today. Thanks, Katie and Tyler, for joining me today. This has been a fun one.
Thank you.
And love some feedback from the audience. Are we talking about AI too much? Let us know. I mean, it's tough. We're really excited about it. As you can see, we're using it directly, but
with dinner plate accuracy, no less.
Yeah, the drones.
Dinner plate accuracy.
Yeah, really cool. All right. We'll be back next week. We've got some good interviews coming up in the next couple of weeks. I think we're talking to Josh Corman next week about the White House announcement. I know he was involved with that. He helped build part of it. And I think all the interviews over the next couple of weeks I'm really excited about. So come join us for those. See you then.